Hello friends out there in YouTube land, Robert Ham with Robert Ham Photography. Hey guys, we are continuing our conversation of the TL70. This is the roll 8 review. I've got a couple more rolls back here we're going to go over in a little bit, but I want to share an idea with you at first. You'll notice that on this roll I've started giving away quite a few of my images, and one of the ways that I like to do that is actually with this beautiful wrap. See how it says an Instax photo by Robert Ham, and it's got phone number up top. On the back, then it's got my Instagram information. Well, when you start getting really good with your Instax photography and you're out trying to make friends, meet and greet new people, then having a wrap like this to hand to the person after the card has developed is really nice. You see, they may throw away your business card, but they're not going to throw away a picture. And that's what we want to create, moments and communication with memory. Very important. So keep that in mind as you're out and about. All right, so roll 8 right here was a really cool roll for me. I started experimenting with portraiture and was very confident in what I was able to provide with the TL70, so I started giving away quite a few of my images starting after roll 8. But let's go ahead and check out real quick right here. This is inside of a restaurant. This is Ashland inside of a restaurant, 5.6 with negative exposure compensation, and look at that beautiful white balance that we've got going on right there. This is a great color. It looks nice. I really enjoy it. That 5.6 is able to give some nice subject separation in the back, and with that negative exposure compensation, we get a nice moody image. Now, we can compare that to this one right here. This is at just regular 5.6 with no negative exposure compensation. So look at what happens here. We can see that the one stop that it's using to make this image darker is quite a bit darker. So we're probably using something, you know, along the lines of 1/60th or 1/125th of a second in this particular image, whereas this one is probably using 1/60th to 1/25th of a second, something like that, in order to get that. We don't know for sure because the camera doesn't tell us, but just look at the difference right there. Notice that, of course, this is my X Pro 1 with my EFX 20 flash and the 35 WR-F2 lens. I absolutely love this camera with my half case on there, and Ashland had a great time taking some photos with it, so we'll go ahead and put that down right there. Now, you guys might remember the story of Kai that I told. This is one of the images that I kept. I gave Kai, of course, this is Kai right here. I gave Kai the other image. If you don't know the story, real simple. How cool was it to be able to take this picture of these guys? This guy's been making my sushi for 3 years. I've never known his name. I thought he got mad at me because I'm always taking pictures of him working behind the counter right here, and I thought I'd kind of irritate him. He never really spoke to me, but when I brought this camera out and started taking pictures, he was really excited. He couldn't talk to me directly because I had no idea. He didn't speak English very well. So another lady that was working at the shop actually came in and started talking. So this was the first time that he and I ever actually talked together, other than just a kind of a hello and a goodbye. So how cool of it that the TL70 was able to bring that memory to life. Okay, moving on along, guys, you'll see a bomb. Of course, I did give him some, but like I said, moving on along, you'll see a bomb. You know, when I was out here and shooting, I should have recognized that f5.6 in this enclosure right here, I should have been at f8, and possibly with f8 with negative exposure compensation. Guys, let's remember my rule. When we are in mixed or indirect shade, we start off at f8 and we use negative exposure compensation. Did I follow my rule? No. So that's what I got. In fact, I didn't even know what I was doing. I moved to f8 right here, and I got an even more overexposed picture. And so as we're talking about exposure, let's think about what the camera's doing. Remember, when you change the exposure, moving from f5.6 to f8 should give about similar exposures if the meter is reading the same, because it's only going to make the shutter shorter here, or excuse me, longer here and shorter there. Remember, on the TL70, if we want to affect the actual exposure, if the camera is in the same lighting condition and the lights haven't changed, changing from an aperture from 5.6 to f8 shouldn't actually change the exposure, because all we're changing is the depth of field. If the lighting condition changed, we would expect it to change the metering outcome. But that's not what actually happened here. What actually happened here was the camera, the first image, was taken at f5.6, and the camera chose a meter. Remember, it's metering for the scene, not the subject. So it chose a setting that was appropriate for what it thought the meter was. And remember, the meter sees quite a bit larger area of scene than the actual lens shows you in the viewfinder. So just changing it to f8 isn't actually going to tell the camera to do anything different other than create the reciprocal for whatever it used for the first wrong exposure to the second wrong exposure. What I needed to be using was my negative compensation in either one of these to get a better exposure. And if that doesn't make sense, guys, go ahead and check out my exposure videos and what reciprocal exposures are. That'll help you quite a bit. Now we can see in the same situation under the same trees, in the same lighting, using the negative exposure compensation brings back that stop maybe a little bit more, maybe it metered a little bit faster, but at the same time there was a different things in the scene for it to meter. And look, negative exposure compensation, f8, f8 with negative exposure compensation, which is better? Okay, obviously this is the one. So once again, how do you change the exposure that the camera is going to give? Use your negative and positive exposure compensation. Otherwise, the camera will choose a reciprocal pretty much of any lighting condition based on your aperture. As we continue on along, I gave Liz, she was such a good sport, I gave Liz a couple of pictures in here as well, and we can see that she got her son and her puppy dog in there. Really nice. Love the colors here. In fact, this is one I still owe her. This is, actually, oh, that's right. So MiNT sent me this roll of film. How cool is that? And so these images are actually provided by MiNT because of their free films. So I thought, what better way than to share the love by giving these images away. And at the end, I also had her take a picture of my son and myself. Of course, I focused it and everything, and set all the settings, and we got a great image. What kind of fun there. So what do we learn? If we look back at these images, we will find out that if we want to actually adjust and affect the actual exposure, the best thing for us to do is change the exposure compensation. You see that? These are both at 5.6, okay? But no exposure compensation and the negative exposure compensation. Look, see, that's what we're looking for. Compare that over here to these three images, okay? Once again, f5.6, f8, the camera's choosing a reciprocal. Even though we're changing the aperture between the two, it's changing a shutter speed to keep the exposure the same. Since it's metering the scene's much brighter than it expects, so it's metering for a longer exposure. This is an overexposed scene. By using the negative exposure compensation that we see here, we can go ahead and rein that in. And we can see that take place directly by comparing these two images. Yes, it's true, this scene is slightly different, but look what the number one factor is. f8. And negative exposure compensation. What did we see here? Regular and negative exposure compensation. So if I asked you the question of how to change the exposure, would you choose to change your aperture or would you choose to change your exposure compensation? Most of the time, you'd be better off changing your exposure compensation. Guys, I'm Robert Ham with RobertHamPhotography.com. I want to remind you to catch me over here anytime, find out all kinds of great tips and tricks with the TL70 and other cameras. I want to thank you for watching and remind you that I'll catch you on the flip side.